Amen.
All right, now I get to introduce our speaker. You all know him. Henry, would you start making your way, because it takes an old man a long time. And really, we're just starting right out, aren't we? So as he makes his slow way up here, I want to show you something. You haven't seen him since the 40th. And you can come around the other side here. At the 40th, he got up to he had a little speaking part at the 40th down at the United Center. And you guys surprised him a little bit. So let's watch a clip of what happened at the 40th. See that right there? Usually, we pay shrinks big money and they make us cry. We got to make him cry. I loved it. Here's Henry.
Did it again. Hey, guys. Willow, you always get to me because I just love you. That's all I'm going to say about that, and it's good to be here. I got a question for you. Who's stressed? You are. Your hand came up really fast. All right. So, how many of you that are stressed brought the person with you that's causing all that stress? You did. You did. Raise your hand. Raise your hand. All right. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to turn to them and tell them, "Stop stressing me out." Just go ahead and do it right now. No, you can't kiss when you do that. All right. Now, the person that just got talked to, I want you to turn back to that other person and say, "You stop stressing your own self out." Go ahead, tell him. Now, here's my question. Which one of you is right? Is it the one that's causing the stress? Or is it the one that's feeling the stress that you're stressing me out? Well, today, we're going to delve into that and figure out who's right. Because I'm not going to tell you the answer. Stress, what is it? Well, you feel it, right? We hear all this stuff about stress. And stress is a real thing. And you know it when you feel it. Sometimes you don't know it when you feel it, but your body knows it. When you're stressed, your blood pressure goes up. If you stay in a stress state for a long time, it stays up for a long time. When you're stressed, your immune system actually is designed to slow down. Your digestion is designed to slow down because you're saving resources. But you shouldn't have to be, but that's the way it happens. And we get stressed, these parts of our body and our brain that we don't have to use right then when we're stressed because we got to do something, right? And so these other parts, they begin to degenerate. And we get sick more when we're stressed. We don't live as long. In fact, they've done research that shows how stressed you are today, we can predict how that will affect your health 10 years from now, the stress you're feeling today. And it's just a real thing. You feel your heart rate and your pulse and concentration and all this kind of stuff. So we're going to delve into today and next weekend. We're going to delve into this thing about stress and how we deal with it and ask the question, is there a better way? And there is, because God has given us a better way because he kind of designed the machine, all right? But the first thing I'm going to do is sort of illustrate how this works. I need a volunteer. Somebody does not have a heart condition or PTSD. If I could have, this outfit, you got to come. No, yeah. Your outfit, how could I choose anybody else? Come on. Over here, hurry up. She looks a little too eager. You look like you're going to come take control of this thing. Are you? No, you're not? Okay. So tell us your name.
Josie.
Josie. This is Josie. I want you to meet. Ah! Ah! What's your phone number, quick? Right now.
8%.
Ah! She's laughing at me now. All right, now did you notice what Josie did the first time I scared her? What did she do? She went like this, and I said, what's your phone number? And she goes, what is your phone? No, I'm not going to. Yeah, she got it. All right, now do you see how stressed she was and how stressed she is now? You're not stressed at all now, are you?
My head's going like this, but no.
Yeah, well, it takes a while. Right? Look at her, she's laughing at me. She's laughing at the psycho boss. She's laughing at the teenager that's driving you crazy. She's laughing at the spouse that does stuff. Is that you? Yeah. What happened? She just grew. The stresses did not change. The outside world did not change. Watch. Look at her, calm as a cucumber. Thank you. You get a free book. What we just saw is kind of how this works, but we don't realize it. See, what we do is we want the stressor to change. We want the outside, and we gripe about our weird boss or our kids' behavior or the other stuff that stresses us out. Have y'all noticed we're in an election year? Anybody stressed about that deal? And tell me if you're stressed about the election. Yeah. Well, I'm not. I'm not at all. I got my future covered because I called my broker. And I've invested in pantsuits and hair dye. I'm covered. I'm covered either way. But see, a lot of times we want the outside world to change because we think, well, if they would be different or if this would change, then I would feel okay. See, that's not how it works, but that's what we want. What happened with Josie? Here's what happened. We exist, our being, the way that God has created us, God is an invisible spirit, heart, mind, and soul, and strength. He's invisible. But when he created this earth, he stepped into the physical realm, or created the physical realm, and he made us humans, and we're standing here in a physical world, and you are a physical being. Now, we talk about your physical being and stress. We talked about heart rate and blood pressure and gastro problems, but we get to the brain. You've got a physical brain. And that physical brain has everything to do with your stress. Because what it does is it secretes chemicals. Now, when Josie first came up here, she was smiling and she was all eager and this, that, and the other, and that same smile I see right now. Because flowing through her brain were certain neurotransmitters. And they're neurotransmitters that create thriving. There's all this good stuff, and I could list them, but you don't care. But it's just the good chemicals. She got up here, I welcomed her, even more of those, and then I turned into a psycho freak artist. And I scared her, I stressed her. Well, what she did was her brain changed, and all of a sudden, the fuel pumps in her brain shot out all of this stuff like cortisol and adrenaline and noradrenaline, all this stuff that activates the system. And so this system, the brain, got amped up. And see, that's who we are. And we're either in a non-amped state, and in a non-amped state, then all the good stuff works because we got the right chemicals flowing through our system. But what happens is amp to D. I don't know how to spell that word. In an amped state, we're amped, right? So here's what happens. You noticed because her brain changed and her body changed, what else changed? The second part of who we are is this mental part, or as the Bible talks about it, it's the invisible part that exists. It's the software that runs everything. It's how we think about situations. See, at first, her software said, this guy's crazy. But then after we went through a little learning experience up here, her software changed. She began to perceive the situation differently. The software changed, and the software, just like on your computer, if you have a Mac, it made it work. Right? And her brain shut down the bad stuff, and now she's thriving again. And see, here's how God has made us, and this is why he says that the answer to stress, as we're going to see, is we have got to work on the physical. I'm going to talk more about that next week. But our physical well-being affects how we think. Our physical well-being affects our stress levels. If you aren't sleeping, if you're not resting, if you're not eating right, and we're pouring this junk into us, and we're asking this machine to run on sewage water, it won't work, okay? That's important. If your blood sugar drops, what happens to your concentration? If your thyroid is off, what happens to the way that you're able to thrive? If your neurotransmitters are down, the way you think about the world turns negative. We know this. We can just measure it. So all of this happens, and they affect each other. And what God says is over here, we got a lot of changing to do. Because here's what I'm after, for you to understand that this is a triangle, and the third piece of the triangle is the other, and that's relationship. And when I entered into her stress moment, and we started to talk and connect, then what happened was all of this changed. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at all three of these today. And I want you to see them as one, because that's who we are. We're physical, we're mental and spiritual, but we don't exist in a vacuum. We exist in this connectedness with other people. And what's going on in these three areas are basically what stress is about. Because I'm going to give you a definition. Stress is when your capacity, the capacity of this triangle, the capacity of your physical well-being, the capacity of your spiritual well-being, and the capacity of your relational circle's ability to walk you through whatever you're walking through, when that capacity gets overtaxed, that's when you feel stressed. Okay? So what's the world's answer? What do all of us do? We want the stressors to change, right? Have you ever gone into a nursery at a hospital with the new babies there? You can see them there. They're lying there. Look through the window. You see them. Some of them seem okay, but there's other ones that are like, they're on track to become attorneys later. They're already looking for a fight. And what do they? They feel stressed, and they're screaming at the world, you come fix this. And see, we think the answer to our stress is if the market would change, if my spouse would change, if my kids would change, if my boss would change, if this would change. And what God says is, you know what? I want to take you through a path of fixing the equipment, and the equipment is us. And so I want to start off with inviting you down a different path of life. And some of you are already on it, some of you are on it and off of it, and some of you, it's new news. But the answer to your stress is going to be spiritual growth. The answer to your stress is going to be more life flowing through the system to build its capacity. So when life screams at you, you can be the new and improved Josie. You can just say, this is an idiot. But she wasn't stressed. So how does that work? Well, let's look at some of the sources of these stressors. What I want to do is I want to camp out, because we don't have all day, right? We've just got a little bit. So I just looked at everything about stress, and I said, I don't have much time, but if I could do the 80-20 rule, if you could just focus on a few things, and we'll get 80 or 90% of your stress covered, that's what we're going to do. So let's talk about the first one. How many of you are into control? Got any control freaks in here? Raise your hand. You know what? If you have a belly button, you're a control freak. Because God designed you that way. He designed your brain to be able to take control. But it's designed to be able to take control of one thing and one thing only: yourself. That's it. But see, when we wanted to be the God of our lives, we changed it. No, just controlling myself is enough. I'm going to control everybody around me. I'm going to get them to behave differently. I'm going to change them. I'm going to worry about everything. I'm going to be in control. Wee. Some of you have that boss, right? And what happens is, if we are sitting in life and we have the desire to control other people, the desire to control all these outcomes that we can't control, the desire to control all of this, here is the formula: a desire for control equals an amped up system. So we're even amped up when we're sleeping if we have a desire for control. And what God says is, come and enter my rest. And what does that mean? Don't work? No. Go work hard on the things you can control. But God's way is that we come to a place in our lives at some point where we say, at every point, no matter what's happening, I'm going to use that as a trigger to surrender to God what I can't control. And this comes at various moments because we want to control everything. How many of you have teenagers? How's that working? Trying to control them. The more you try to control them, the worse it is. I remember a woman told me, she said, I had an awakening one day. And I said, what? She said, well, I had a 17-year-old daughter, and she was having a pool party. And the party started at 7, and all the teenagers are going to start showing up. And she said, I'm driving home, and there's a traffic jam, and I realize I'm not going to get there, and I'm freaking out, and I'm starting to worry because I'm going to be 15 minutes late to the pool party. There's going to be teenagers there in swimming suits, and oh my gosh, what am I? And she's freaking. And then she said, all of a sudden, it hit me. I stopped, I picked up my phone, I called her. Here's what I said. I called my daughter, and here's what I said. Susan, I am no longer responsible for your virginity. And I hung up the phone. And she said, I've been a different person ever since. See, there's just some things you can't control. But we have the illusion. Just last week, a friend of mine, a couple that are really, really, really good friends of ours, the mom called me, and she was in tears, and she said, I'm worried about our daughter. And they've got a 20-year-old daughter who was home from college and was thinking she couldn't go back to college because her stress level was getting so high, and she had developed this fear of throwing up, a fear of being sick. She never threw up, but she always had, and it was starting to expand, and now she didn't want to go to a party if she thought there was anything there that might make her sick, and it was starting to affect her life, and ultimately that day she was crying in a ball on the floor, and the mom called me and said she's supposed to go to school next week. And she's saying she can't get on the bus because what if she gets sick? And because they're going on these outings and bus tours in the first week of it. And I said, well, she's not going to be here long. There's not a lot I can do, but I'd like to meet with her and see if I can help. And so she comes to my office, and so I'm asking her about this and asking her about the fear and all this. And she's so smart and so insightful and so just a cool kid. So I'm going through this list and I said, so is the stress of school really getting to you? She said, no, I love school. I said, are you worried about flunking tests? Does it get worse around tests? She goes, no, not really. I make good grades. And I said, well, what about your friends? Are you worried that they won't like you or you're going to get rich? She goes, no, I have good friends. And sort of like, I'm going, where's this stress coming from? I said, how about control? Do you like to be in control? She goes, oh, yeah. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, of course I want to be in control. I said, of what? She said, everything. She said, it works for me. I said, how do you mean? She said, well, like at home, if the family doesn't do what I want, I just, I know how to do it. She said, I can give them the silent treatment and throw a fit and walk off, and everybody, ultimately I found I can get people to do what I want because I want to take control. I've never actually had anybody admit that to me. And this 20-year-old was saying, absolutely. And so I'm listening to this. I know the laws of physics in the brain. You cannot have a desire to control things and not have an amped up system. So then I asked her a question, because she seemed so calm. I said, do you have any little habits, little kind of OCD things? And she goes, do you? She said, yeah, I've got some. She said, actually, I have a lot. I said, what? And she said, well, fours. I said, fours? She said, yeah, fours. She said, I have to do things in fours. She said, if you notice, I just moved the cup, the coffee cup. She said, because it was sitting over there, and I moved it, and I didn't think about it, but I only moved it once, so I had to move it 4 times. I said, what happens if you don't? She says, well, I just get, and see what happens if she didn't take control of the cup is the amped up system was sending off chemical, bodily, brain-oriented signals to her. Something bad's gonna happen, something bad's gonna happen. Now, nothing bad's gonna happen. She has an amped system always sending off false alarms. It's like when a truck goes down your street and all the car alarms start to go off. It's a false alarm. And see, people that wanna have control of everything, their system is amped. The amygdala is talking to the brain all the time. There's danger, there's danger, there's danger. Oh, I must do something. Stop the pool party. Like that's going to be the answer. Or I can't get on the plane because it's going to crash. Or I got to do this, or I got to get this. If I behave a certain way, then they'll like me. If I meet all their expectations, then they'll be in a good mood. And see, we start to think that when my body tells me there's danger, we start to think, I gotta do something. And we take the bait. We take the bait, the original bait that Lucifer gave to Adam and Eve. He said, you can be God. You can control things. And we take that bait still every single day. Every time we have this impulse. So I reached down and I moved the cup. She goes, I said, don't take the bait. She said, what do you mean? I said, you're getting stressed, aren't you? She said, well, yeah, I got to move the cup. I said, why do you have to move the cup? She starts talking about, I got to move the cup. See, we feel that every day. I got to go fix, what if? All that is it is a fantasy to calm down our system that's amped up because we think we have to control everything, and the reality is we cannot, and that amps our system more. The wish to control is an amped up system unless we reel it back in and say, I'm going to have control of myself. And so I'll call her Susie. I said, Susie, I want you to just feel this, how you're feeling anxious right now. She goes, yeah, I'm feeling it. And I said, well, let's make it a little worse. What are you afraid of throwing? I went like that, and she goes, I said, no throw up, but you're feeling it, aren't you? She goes, yeah, I'm feeling it. And I said, okay, let's just sit here and feel this. I want you to just feel it. Where do you feel it? I feel it in my chest. I'm starting to kind of close. I feel a tightness. I said, just feel it. Describe it to me. You're not going to die. I said, so when you start to feel this, when you start to feel that anxiety, that is a trigger to surrender to God. That is a trigger instead of a trigger to fix the cup or to go for the 46th time. You better do your homework or bark at somebody or do something. See, we let the system tell us there's a trigger for me to go take control of somebody or something, and God says, when you feel afraid, let that be a trigger to say, God, I'm just going to sit here and feel this, and I'm going to talk to you about it. And I'm going to talk to Henry about it, if you're Susie, or I'm going to talk to Joey about it. But God, I'm going to stop. When I start to When I start to see that the world is dangerous and the market might go down and one of them might get elected or whatever it is, and I start to feel this, because I hear people talk about all different kinds of fears. I start to feel this. I'm going to go and I'm going to listen to you, because you're going to tell me you're in control. And here's what happens. Now, this is science. Every time you give in to the fear and you do whatever you do to try to control somebody or a situation, that reinforces the circuitry that keeps that fear going. This is why ultimately, how do people get over the fear of flying? They fly. Ultimately, how do we get over the fear of intimacy? We open up. And you don't have to do that all at once, because if this gets too overwhelmed, it gets too overwhelmed. But we start to take gradual little steps of allowing God to call us into that which we have been so afraid that if we don't take control, that He won't. So the first invitation to grow is, I want you to look at the impulse to worry, the impulse to take control, as a trigger to no longer take control, but as a trigger to go back to your desk, sit down, let God do His work. Let Him do His work when you've done all of yours. That mother had brought that 17-year-old girl up great, with great values, had talked to her about sex, had her in youth groups, all of that.